Well, I want to jump right in with some news that we just learned today. Today, the First Lady announced in a written statement that her and the president's teenage son, Barron, also tested positive for COVID in the wake of her and the president's own diagnoses. Barron, according to the First Lady, has thankfully recovered. He's since tested negative. It's such a dramatic piece of news to learn. And of course, we're all grateful about his recovery. But I just have to ask your reaction to the fact that the White House itself really does appear to be a significantly sized COVID cluster of its own, including infecting the whole First family now.
Well, I wish the best for the First Lady, for her son, and for the president. I know too many people, I think we all do, who have contracted the virus, horrible stories of people who have lost family members, and I don't wish it on anybody. The suffering that people are experiencing is really quite significant. But I will say that, it's what I've been saying, Rachel. The president and this administration have been the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. You just go back to what they knew and when they knew it. And let's start with January 28th, when the president, the vice president were informed that this thing was deadly, that it could hurt children, that it was 5 times more deadly than the flu, that it was airborne. And they covered up that information. They didn't share it with the American people. And, when I look at I think it's 7.5 million people that have contracted the virus with, as we now know, potentially serious lifelong consequences in terms of lung scarring and things of that nature. When we look at the over 215,000 people that have died in just the last several months, and they have families and friends, and they had life to live, and you put that in the context of the president's failure to tell the American people what was going on so they could protect themselves and their families, much less so that we could have a president and leadership in our country who had a plan to deal with it. And now look where we are. It has been a failure of a magnitude that is causing millions and millions of people to suffer because of the public health consequences and because of the economic consequences. And frankly, that is why we need a new president in the White House who will embrace science, who will be guided by fact and truth and speak truth to the American people and have a plan. Because this administration still has no plan, Rachel. They still have no plan. You contrast that with Joe Biden, who's saying we're going to have a national plan for testing and for treatment and for vaccines, which will be free. Contact tracing. This was avoidable to the extent that the American people have now suffered. They didn't need to suffer like people have been suffering if there had been leadership guided by science and guided by truth.